Right, good morning. Welcome to our first CPD session on working career development for young people with SEND. I'm going to just talk a little bit about who I am to start with. It is an information giving session, so I am just going to whip through all the slides and hopefully get us all starting from the same base, really, in terms of our knowledge around career development for young people with SEND. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ruth Broom and I'm the SEND Careers Hub lead in Birmingham. And in the SEND Careers Hub, we have 35 schools that we're now working with, and our cornerstone employers and funders as well. And because it's new to us all, really, we just started in September, I thought it would be useful to deliver this session so we're all kind of from the same sheet. So during this session, or by the end of this session, you will be able to understand, have a better knowledge of the challenges that face young people with SEND in terms of careers, and also be able to describe who young people with SEND are, which actually helps everything else fall into place a little bit, especially you know, if you're trying to deliver encounters, employer encounters or work experience encounters. Also, you'll be able to understand what positive career outcomes would look like for the different career groups of SEND. And I'm also going to introduce you to the same and different career development model, which is useful for everyone who's involved with working with young people with SEND, you know, from teaching assistants, SENCOs, careers advisors, careers leaders, employers, enterprise advisors, and us as a team. So first of all, I just wanted to start from the very beginning, really, to just make sure that you're aware of the actual the terminology around SEND. Obviously, it's quite littered with acronyms, but the acronym that I use the most, I try to avoid as many as possible. But we do use SEND as an abbreviation for young people with special educational needs and or disabilities. Sometimes the D is put into commas because not everyone has a disability, a physical disability. But we do say, you know, young people with SEND is the correct way to talk about this field of young people. Just a few figures for you there. 1.3 million young people with SEND in the country, and not all of those are educated in special schools, as we will find out as we go along. And also it does include vulnerable young people, so it might not be people with a specific disability or special educational need. It might be that they're looked after children. It does include, so it might be that they're homeless, young people who are in the criminal justice system, and obviously all of these you know, vulnerable young people are less likely to achieve recognised qualifications and more likely to become NEET, which is the abbreviation for not in education, employment or training. We do have enterprise advisors working with our special schools, our volunteers from business, and just to say that your role is critical to support these young people, because engaging with employers and the world of work can really sort of change their direction in life and change their life path. So thank you for getting involved with us. So in terms of, I just wanted to speak about this really in terms of Birmingham. So these are all the different establishments where young people with SEND might be educated. We do cover SEND Hub. We have mainstream schools with high SEND. We have special schools. We do have a hospital school, James Brindley, and we have alternative provision schools. And obviously we have the schools with sixth form. We don't have any virtual schools, but we do work with the Birmingham Career Service, who work with virtual schools, and that's when young people are educated at home or have a different type of school environment. So you may have heard of the National Career Strategy that came out in 2017, and that did consider a lot of options for young people working with SEND and trying to, raise the profile of careers development for these young people. It covers a broad range of challenges, but the one that I want to draw your attention to most of all is that in one of the essences of the careers strategy and everything that we do in terms of the Careers Hub and our careers development work is that staff, or all of us, should work from the presumption of paid work. So that's the starting point for young people with SEND, and that's the aspiration that we should have for all of them. And then everything, if you start with that presumption, everything falls into line really to support that. So obviously there's the career strategy includes much more encounters with employers for young people with SEND, which is something that they perhaps haven't had as much access to in the past. And obviously differentiating is key really. So there's lots of different groups of young people, and as we've said, lots of different settings. So differentiation is actually something that special schools are very good at, and it's perhaps learning from them to make that a wider offer for these young people. So we do use the Gatsby benchmarks in terms of the careers development for young people with SEND. They are the same. They do apply. The Gatsby benchmark, there has been a lot of discussion in the past that the Gatsby benchmarks aren't relevant for young people with SEND, but actually they are. And the Gatsby Foundation very much believe that this applies to all young people across the board really. I appreciate you can't read this quite so well, but if you're aware of the Gatsby benchmarks, and if you're not, then you perhaps ought to be. But they do, the same benchmarks apply for all young people. The way that we measure those, and this is what has changed. So the Gatsby benchmarks haven't changed, but what has changed is the way that we audit the progress of schools against Gatsby benchmarks. So we do now have a compass evaluation tool, which is slightly different, and it does measure progress slightly differently, and it does use different language. So it means that special schools have been able to use it more effectively, and it's more relevant to the young people that they're working with. So that's a good conversation to have with your enterprise coordinator if you're working with a school, in a school, or you're an enterprise advisor working with a school, is to have a bit of a discussion about what those differences might look like, so that you understand how the schools are measuring that progress. So for those of you who aren't aware of the Gatsby benchmarks, there are 8. Gatsby Benchmark 1 is that all schools should have a stable careers programme. Gatsby Benchmark 2 is that young people should learn from career and labour market information, as well as parents. And that's quite key for special schools, because obviously parents need to be brought into the discussion much more often in a much more effective way. Addressing the needs of each pupil is Gatsby Benchmark 3. And again, this is key for working with young people with special needs, because every person is different. Linking curriculum learning to careers is Gatsby Benchmark 4. Special schools do have a different curriculum to mainstream, so they do have a bit more flexibility in terms of teaching careers in their curriculum, but that's something that they should be doing across the board. 5 is encounters with employers and employees. So as we've said, every pupil should have the opportunity to meet with an employer in every year as they go through secondary school. The compass tool does have a bit of differentiation around that in terms of how that's measured, so there is a bit of flexibility in special schools. It doesn't have to be a blanket approach anymore. Experiences of the workplace, Gatsby 6, so again that's slightly different in terms of compass, so that can include work experience in the school, or sort of like an enterprise, an encounter. It doesn't have to be, it's not really talking about traditional work experience, although that is included as well. Gatsby 7 is encounters with further and higher education. Obviously this isn't necessarily for all young people with special needs, and there is flexibility around that in the compass tool. And then 8 is the personal guidance, and again in mainstream this is the requirement is that every pupil between up to year 11 has had at least one personal guidance interview, but in terms of special schools, it does recognise that careers guidance can be delivered slightly differently. It doesn't have to be that one-to-one guidance for them to meet that benchmark. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you are aware of these in one way or another, but these are the main challenges for young people with SEND in terms of their careers and their future. Obviously there's a low levels of knowledge about who young people with SEND are, and we're going to talk a bit more about that in this session to try and address that. Families and carers need much more support. It's a much more complex landscape to navigate their way through, and so support is needed for them to understand that just as much as the young person. Obviously it has to be much more personalised. There's a lack of careers resources. Activity is hyper-local, so that's part of what we're doing in the Careers Hub, is to surface what is happening in schools so that can be shared across the hub, so that the learning is accelerated within schools as to how that can be done better. Employers wanting to engage with young people feel anxious, not all but some, and so that is a barrier and it prevents employers from engaging with young people. And again, that's another priority for us as a hub to try and address that wherever we can. College provision varies from place to place. I'm sure you're aware, and young people can get stuck in a continual sort of merry-go-round of college courses, which doesn't actually lead them to anything positive in the end. So those are most of the challenges. So I'm just going to go into, as I've mentioned, the to talk more about who these young people are and what their successful career outcomes for them might look like. So In terms of the SEND Code of Practice, it talks about 4 different groupings, and these are the groupings here. Obviously, these aren't standalone groupings because young people with SEND tend to have a variety of conditions or disabilities, not just one. But the broad groupings are communication and interaction, difficulties or disabilities, learning difficulties, which can be severe or moderate or profound and multiple, social, emotional and mental health difficulties, and physical disabilities. What we do in terms of careers development is that we actually simplify this and put the 4 groups into 2. So we end up with SEND Group 1 and SEND Group 2. That's going to be language that we're using much more often in what we do, because it does actually help to shape the interventions that take place with these young people. So SEND Group 1 is young people who typically wouldn't take GCSEs or a formal exam that employers would recognise. SEND Group 2 are young people with SEND who could typically take GCSEs and can enjoy similar opportunities to their peers. So those are the 2 very simple groupings, which we will gear everything around. So in terms of SEND Group 1, so these are the young people that wouldn't take traditional formal exams like GCSEs and more likely to have an education and healthcare plan. And for them, these are the positive career outcomes that they can expect to achieve. So this supported internships, supported or inclusive apprenticeships, supported employment, and you can see that for all of those, that goes alongside having an EHC plan. So that means that there's funding attached to that to support them in each of those different activities that they're involved with. They could be entitled to extended workplace interviews, supported enterprise, supported volunteering. FE college is an option. Of employer-driven opportunities, and so most of the young people in this SEND Group 1, will end up going to college, because that's just the easiest option. Okay, so if we're working with young people in SEND Group 1, this is the kind of support that they need. So careers learning and development needs to start as early as possible. Certainly, straight away in year 7, if they're coming into the secondary school, that plan needs to start straight away. More preparation for the young person and their family, and this is where, if the school is working from the presumption of paid employment, everything else falls in line with this. So throughout their education in school, their career development, their personal career development plan will be working towards that as an outcome, and it will be tailored to meet that need. Obviously, employers need more time if they're going to be working with these young people to build their confidence in how to engage with these young people. They need more adaptations, and for this group of young people, actually the value of work experience and employer engagement is even higher. because they just need that preparation, and they need it to be happening all the time, really, on a progressive way, working towards that that end goal. So this is the same and different career development model that has been developed by Talentino, and we'll see at the end how they compare. This is the model for young people with SEND in Group 1, who are unlikely to take GCSEs. What you'll see at the end is actually, when you put the two together, a lot of what is the same for both groups, and that's things like, you know, these young people are young people. They still have the same hopes and dreams. They're teenagers. They still want to socialise with their peers and their friends, but for them, everything is just much more complex in terms of, you know, their educational healthcare plans, multiple agency working, getting involved with their progression. The transition process is much more complicated. And then the orange segment, there is a download of this, so don't worry if you can't see all the different segments, because I'm struggling to see it myself. But the orange bit is the career development delivery, and that's what is the same, really, is very much the same for both groups, in terms of the Gatsby benchmarks, employer encounters, work experience, learning from labour market information, but it needs to be delivered differently for this group of young people, because of the different needs that they might have. So this just goes through what I've just said, really. So I won't stay on that slide too much. So then when we move to SEND Group 2, so this is the group of young people who would typically take GCSEs. They might have a physical disability or a sensory impairment. They might be visually impaired or hearing impaired, or it might be that they've struggled in mainstream school and they've ended up in an alternative provision setting. So they're still able to take their GCSEs, and they can still expect the same outcomes as you would from their peers in a mainstream school. And these are all the usual outcomes, such as apprenticeships, FE, AT, employment, enterprise and T levels. It's just that for this group of young people, the barriers are much bigger, and so for them, in terms of the career development, they just need all of these things, and this is very much where employers come in, because having that encounter with an employer can certainly sort of raise their aspirations, you know, make them feel valued, make them feel cared for. They need more time to access different encounters or activities. They might need more preparation. So if they're going on work experience, they might need a much more support from the school or from the employer. They could need more adaptations to make it, you know, accessible for them. They need more time to build trust. So, you know, it can be that these young people are just very, very disengaged, disaffected, vulnerable, scared. So they just need that care, really, in prepping them for the encounters that they're going to be getting involved in. More support from families and carers, and obviously that might not be the same for everyone. So it might be that some of these young people don't have a family at all. So, you know, that's where we need to work with them even more to help them to engage with the career support that's being delivered. So again, this is the same and different model for the SEND Group 2. I'm just going to think that we can put them together. So on the left hand side we have the SEND Group 1, and on the right hand side we have SEND Group 2. So you can see for SEND Group 1, in the pink part of the circle, there is quite a difference in terms of, you know, the outcomes that they can expect and how they might be able to, you know, the journey that they're taking to achieve those outcomes. And actually the same and different, which is the bit where, you know, the career development is being delivered, is not actually that different from each other. It's just needs a bit of tweaking. So that's something that we will include with this presentation for you to download and, you know, start to look at when you're thinking about what you're doing in school. Sorry, excuse me. So we have motored through. So just in terms of reflection, the majority of young people with SEND can enjoy very positive career outcomes, but the career outcomes do remain poor. And as I've said, this is part of our remit to try and change that. As I've said, issues with supply and demand. You know, career development in school is only one side of the coin. We need to have those outcomes, the supply, you know, to make sure that young people are accessing something, you know, a positive future. And then so young people with SEND, as we all know, do face multiple barriers and complexities, but they do have the same dreams and aspirations, and it's our job to support those. So that was a real whistle-stop tour, but I'm hoping that that's given you a bit of an insight into the language that we use in terms of career development. You can see that the challenges identified are quite clearly there, and the most important thing is the two different SEND groups, 1 and 2, which we're going to be working with going forward. In terms of careers development, and this is for everyone who's involved with this and young people with SEND, it's very much about, to sum up, I would say, having a can-do attitude. You know, we talk about what these young people can do, not what they can't do, and that unites us really, because they do they're a multi-talented group of young people, and we need to recognise that and celebrate it. So just to say thank you to you all for your time. You can contact myself, Ruth Broom or Claire Donnelly at the Careers Hub. We will be posting this out to you, and we will make it accessible on our YouTube channel, Birmingham Careers Hub YouTube channel. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.